But anyway, so this is what we've got going on right now. I just put these in yesterday, and I want to show you that it's like the same. But the reason is a big warm bubble, a big Arctic storm that was quite warm, moved into the Arctic Ocean, pulling the warm air up in the west, but allowing an inflow of cold from the north. And this has been happening recently, but it could well have been happening for thousands of years. Now, I'm going to take the cutest bird in the world, the puffin. The Atlantic puffin was actually voted the cutest bird in the world, all right? And they are having problems. And I want to show you I was in Iceland for doing some work and some other things in 2011. And so all the pictures are mine and my wife, and it was very interesting to see what was happening. And so Iceland, upper right, just from Greenland there. And notice the difference in the ice cover between 1984 and 2014. And these are birds that we don't know much about when they're not breeding, because they actually breed on land. And the rest of the time, we haven't hooked, as far as I know, nobody's hooked. We've been trying to hook little satellite beepers to our birds, but they're almost too heavy. It doesn't help if you kill the bird that you put the satellite beeper on. No, yeah, I feel that way too. It looks really bad. I like their name, Little Friar, Little Brother. They're really cool. They're not particularly afraid of humans. I walked up to within 4 or 5 feet to take these pictures. Now, this is Iceland in the winter and Iceland in the summer. Note the ice that stays. These are glaciers. These are probably going to be gone in 100 years. Has nothing whatsoever to do with puffins. But what has to do with puffins in the puffin case actually is a change that we can directly correlate to the climate. So the average temperature in the Arctic is rising twice as fast. In this case, it's an ocean surface temperature, an upper 200-foot temperature. And it's quite a bit warmer north of Iceland. And what's happening, here's the colonies. And they're awesome little birds. You can just walk up to them. You can get great pictures. Everybody thinks they're cute. They are. You don't see their babies, which are really ugly, okay? Because that's breeding plumage that you're seeing. They come out of the burrow, which is about 4 feet deep back in the lava, and jump out at night. You never see them. But the ocean south of Iceland is several degrees warmer. And they eat sand eels. You see the ones here with the one in the lower left with it in its mouth. If you see a puffin with sand eels in its mouth, it's got a baby. You don't have to go in the burrow and count the chick. There's only one. And if they're feeding it, that's what they're feeding it. The problem is other things are eating that. Puffins forage out a few miles away. They can dive to 200 feet deep, which means they don't get deep in the water system at all. Sand eels, that's what you're seeing in that one. And in the winter when they're not breeding, you see little flocks, but they haven't really been studied because they're in hard environments. 2.5 million breeding pairs. 10 million total just in Africa, Iceland rather, sorry. Half of the world population. There hasn't been a successful breeding season since 2005. I checked the data again yesterday. 2013 and 2014 were complete failures for the south half of Iceland. And now, these guys live a long time. Some live 40 years. The average life is more like in the mid-20s. But right now, half of the puffins aren't breeding. Now, it's the cutest bird in the world, so everybody cares. They stopped letting the Icelanders eat them, okay? I took that part out of my talk. I had a part on how to cook a puffin, but some people did. Yeah. They sell puffin steaks in the restaurants, okay? I didn't try one. My wife told me she would give me really bad shots if I did. And when you're married to a doctor who gives you all your shots, you pay attention, okay? Anyway, this is a puffin burrow. Where have all the chicks gone? So they went out. Now, the Icelanders say we are not killing enough whales, but that's not what it was. What their studies are finding is that because of the ocean water, tuna and other fish, shallow water in most cases, are feeding farther north. And so the puffin eels and things that they eat are being eaten by fish that usually aren't this far north. And so the number, and they're not in the Arctic Ocean, so they're not north of Iceland. And so if you divide Iceland in half, if you remember that first picture, if you divide it in half, all the red circles in the south no production, no babies. And I don't mean 1 in 100. I mean, as far as we know, no production. Because all you have to do is sit there with a camera and look for birds with sand eels. And they don't have them. And yet in the north, you do see that. And so anyway, the colonies, the north colonies are still breeding and very successful. And it was obvious that it was successful. You didn't see the chicks, but you saw lots of them. And so they're definitely going to be declining if nothing happens. Or they phenologically change a food source in the south. And it's possible. But the problem puffins have, they can't move. They require 4-foot burrows that are usually in lava tubes. It's a very special, hard to do situation for the burrow. And so we don't see a lot of motion, at least yet. And there you go. That's a picture that I took. That, I don't know how many are in its mouth, but a lot. It's feeding a chick. I took that one on Grimsey Island in the Arctic Ocean. So cold, cold water. So that's a happy one. And humans use them for food, but humans also use a lot of the small fish for cow and other food. The ocean is warmer, it's measurable, and the sand eel population is being eaten by other things. Now, is that a direct correlation? We're not positive, but it seems to be. So a lot of this has to be almost analog data. Now, one of my favorite birds. Yes, I'm going to New Zealand when I leave here for a month, but within the next 2 years, I'm going to South Georgia Island to photograph these guys. They're huge, and they're doing really, really, really well. They like the climate change that's going on, the variation. Wandering albatross, the largest rugged bird in the world. I've seen a couple of these. They're almost scary. They're so big. I spent a month in Argentina out south of the Falkland Islands taking pictures of birds last November. And so think about this. The body's almost 3.5 feet long. The wingspan is 8 to 11 feet. This is a huge bird. They weigh up to 26 pounds. Now, they tend to produce 1 egg, although some nests have produced 2 lately. The Latin is living in exile. But what I like about it, it's a circumpolar roaming bird, no known predators. It's got an 11-foot wingspan. It lives in the worst environments on planet Earth. And I like bad environments, so I'm trying to get there to study them. Their length of foraging, because there's more, the wind speeds in the south are higher, and they've gone up markedly in the last 40 to 50 years. So this allows more foraging faster for this bird, so it can get to food sources faster. The average bird is increased by 2 pounds. Think about it. If this thing weighs 26 pounds, it's got a body mass increase of 10%. It's having the breeding success, and because the only time they're on the ground is when they're breeding. It's very easy to do counts. So there are people in a whole bunch of islands around Antarctica that do the counts. And so breeding success has indefinitely improved. They're seeing, in cases, sometimes 2 eggs, which you never saw before, and now almost 100% survival. They just don't have any predators. I don't know what it'd be like to be pecked with something that had a bill that's about that long. Probably not nice. This is what we get. So more incubation time, more breeding success. This is South Georgia Island. Here's the birds I work with. White-tailed ptarmigan, Lagopus lacura. If you look it up, the old name was lacurus. They just changed it in the last couple of years. I think they're absolutely beautiful. They're terribly hard to find because they look like where they live. And I really mean that. And these, we work it's in Montana. I don't have a little place to show you the arrow. It's right where we're working. I'm studying them right here and these 2 places here, which I'll talk about. Both mountains, much higher in the south than in the north. Awesome places. If you haven't been to Glacier National Park, go. It's the prettiest place on planet Earth. I'm totally biased. The bears don't eat people. Okay, it's the smallest grouse. Inhabits only alpine or Arctic environments. Now think about this. It doesn't migrate. We tag birds, so we put little numbers on their little, we band them. And we've never had a banded bird move more than 20 miles. And now here's the thing, I don't have it up here, but to me it's awesome. They can be buried in the snow in winter and gain weight. They have evolved to be an Arctic cold weather specialist. They've got feathers all over them. They can eat little buds off of the end of trees in the snow in the winter and put on weight. Now think about that. How would you do in that environment? You know, would you put weight on? If I buried you in snow, okay? Probably not. When we say they have a cryptic plumage, they're really hard to find. They look like the rocks and things around. As a matter of fact, the guy I work with, Dr. Dave Benson, he took me out the first couple times I was working with him 4 years ago, and I knew he could see birds. I could just read him. I couldn't find them. It took me about 2 months to be really good at finding these crazy little birds. But they're not afraid of you. They don't fly away. They live their entire lives. They breed in snow edge, ice edge environments. They bury themselves in the snow in the winter, and they gain weight. And the global variation, at least in glacier, we're going to lose them from the bottom 48 probably in the next 15 to 20 years. Because although there's a lot of confounding factors, our populations at glacier are down 95%. And that's the definition of bad. They are always above the tree line. This is the normal environment. There's the tree line. You don't even start looking until you get above the tree line, and you only look near patches of snow. And so this is, I took this picture it was about August 8th. We had just been able to get in this backcountry. At Glacier, they really don't let you in if it kills people. And I don't mean the bears, I mean the snow. Some of the places I worked at this last summer, I was 15 days backcountry in one, didn't camp on snow. So they had a good snowfall last winter, which is good for these birds. That's Dave Benson. I want you to notice, see the birds? See how close he is to them? Notice they're not flying away. We noose catch them. You have this rod with a noose on it. You put the noose over their neck, you pull it tight, you run up and grab them. They don't run away from you. They don't see you as a predator. They haven't evolved for humans to be the predator. And then we banned them. All of these guys were already banned. There's 3 right there. The rocks, by the way, are about 2 billion years old, which is cool geologically. They're very approachable birds. You can just sit and study them. We collect their poop to look at their parasites. You know how you do that? You go sit down. They're there. You literally stand there. The ones I was working with were about where the light was. They poop. You go over and you scoop it up. You have to collect it. And I say, what'd you do today? I collected 32 poop samples. Okay. But we're looking for parasites and other things. Now here's the normal environment. They're very closely associated with snow and water. And they have to be now because Glacier's a lot warmer. A lot warmer. And the one in the lower right, that's not calling. That was heat stress panting. They die at temperatures above 70 degrees Fahrenheit. And so they really have to be around the snow and ice, which in many cases is very close to being gone totally in Glacier. And there's still plenty of snow and ice up in Canada. We're trying to, well, the reason I'm doing the work, now this is getting off this subject a little bit, down in New Mexico, is supposedly, I've never been able to find them, and I'm going to go again next summer and spend a month searching. There's white-tailed ptarmigan above the tree line where there's no ice and snow. If so, they've evolved a different metabolic regime. And if they're genetically close enough, we may transfer birds. And so we still have the white tail at Glacier.